I'm Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North. We'll begin our fall election coverage with candidates in the race for State Senate Minnesota District 7. Republican Donna Bergstrom and Democrat Jen McEwen are here in the studio. We'll also hear from candidates running in other state legislative races as we begin a series of Meet Your Candidate speeches. And a well-known figure has stepped in to take the reins at Duluth's DECC, reeling since the pandemic shut down most public events. It's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. Dennis is off this week as we alternate hosting the program during the pandemic. Our show was recorded on Wednesday afternoon. Well, we begin with some of the top stories around the region. Essentia Health's new hospital project marked 1 year of construction this week. The Vision Northland project's revised timeline has it now slated for completion in 2023. The $900 million hospital will be Duluth's tallest building and largest ever private development. Nonprofit manufacturer MDI is hiring 200 contract workers at its Minnesota plants, including on the Iron Range. The company received an order from the U.S. Postal Service to produce 2 million totes and 1 million trays by this fall. MDI has plants in Cohasset, Hibbing, and Grand Rapids. Lakeview and Two Harbors marked the opening of a major medical campus expansion with a ribbon-cutting ceremony this week. The $15 million project connects Lakeview Hospital to Lakeview Medical Clinic and Pharmacy. Lakeview is part of the St. Luke's medical system. And Sky Harbor Airport on Minnesota Point marked the opening of its realigned runway last week. The 2,600-foot runway was rebuilt due to old-growth forest encroaching on the flight path. The $13 million project was primarily funded by the Federal Aviation Administration. But now, turning to the fall election. Campaigns are ramping up with just over 6 weeks left until Election Day. In Minnesota's 7th District State Senate race, voters will be sending a new senator to the Capitol. The 7th District encompasses most of the city of Duluth. Well, joining us now is Donna Bergstrom, the Republican-endorsed candidate in State Senate District 7. And Jen McEwen is the DFL-endorsed candidate in State Senate District 7. And thanks to both of you for being here. We really appreciate you coming in, making time in this busy schedules of yours.
Thank you, Julie.
Summer's over. A lot of folks are just starting to pay attention to what's happening as we approach the election. For those who are just tuning in, Donna, maybe you can start by talking a little bit about who you are and why you decided to jump into the race.
Sure, absolutely, yes. I'm Donna Bergstrom. I was raised in this area, grew up in Carlton. My grandfather graduated from Old Central High School, so I have deep roots in this area. I graduated from Carlton High School, went down to the university in the Twin Cities and got my degree in political science. And then after a little trip backpacking around Europe, I came back to the United States and decided to join the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps for just over 20 years and retired in 2010 as a lieutenant colonel, as a military intelligence officer. Got to see a lot of the world that way and meet a lot of good people and learn how to work with teams. And that is a big component of the Marine Corps, is the leadership part of it. 2010 convinced my husband, we were living out in Washington, D.C., that Minnesota was really a great place to be and we should come back to my home state. So we moved back here, and since that time I've been working, and I was a guardian ad litem for a short bit of time with the 6th Judicial District, and I worked at the Fond du Lac Care Clinic as a patient coordinator, and I was working as a lobbyist just recently for the Red Lake Nation, which I'm a member of, and finished up working with them in this last session. So got a lot of experience under my belt.
Jen, what made you jump into the race?
Well, a number of reasons. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. I grew up in Duluth. My family on both sides has been in Duluth for generations. I actually grew up in the home that my great-grandparents built after they were married here and had immigrated from Sweden and met here and were married. So I grew up in that home, and that's the home where my husband and I are raising our kids today. So I'm a graduate of our public schools, and my two kids go to our public schools as well. They're in middle school, and my husband is a public school teacher as well. I'm an attorney. I represent disabled workers against insurance companies, and I also handle Social Security disability appeals in my work now. Prior to that, I was a public defender in the 6th Judicial District and worked alongside Donna at that time as well. And I'm also the president of the board of the Damiano Center in Duluth right now. So, and I decided to jump in the race for a number of reasons, but I would say that primary among them was the sense of urgency. I had been kind of following our incumbent previous senators' votes on some natural resource issues, and I and some other Duluthians had been disappointed in some of those votes. And so I was following those and considering that perhaps it would be appropriate to make a challenge at the primary level, but wasn't sure if it was an appropriate time for me in my life. I have a career and a busy life, but when the pandemic hit, it's sort of, I'm sure both of you felt this way as well, that it brings everything into a kind of stark relief, where you're sort of assessing, am I doing what I should be doing in terms of serving the purpose of this time and place and answering the call to service? So I decided now is the time for me to jump in and for us to be advancing on some really important issues that we haven't been moving forward and making enough progress on. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Of course, COVID-19 has dramatically impacted Duluth's economic health. Can you talk a little bit, we'll start with you, Jen, about how you think state government should maybe best help communities like Duluth on the road to recovery? Let's try to keep the answers somewhat brief because we want to get as many topics in as we can.
Absolutely. You know, I think primary to that is the local government aid. A state senator is charged with making sure that that local government aid goes through and that our local governments then are able to provide our basic infrastructure services, our water infrastructure, road infrastructure, to keep our property taxes down, because property taxes are actually quite regressive. But especially now in the time of our pandemic and in the recession that has come upon us, this is a time to lean in economically. This is not a time for austerity. It is not a time to make cuts that aren't absolutely necessary. But this is a time to invest. We know that from our history in the Great Depression. When we invested into our economy, that's what helped lift the economy out. We have to give people a means to be able to participate again in the economy. So those are some of the best ways to recover and to go forward.
And Donna, how do you think state government can best help communities like Duluth as we start to get back into economic recovery?
Well, we absolutely need to open up our small businesses again. They're the backbone of our economy. The other aspect is here in Northeast Minnesota, we have abundant resources. So we have our mining and our logging and our trucking industry. We have a beautiful port here. We have rails. We have surface transportation. We can really move our economy along while we gain energy independence. We can talk about Line 3 replacement project. That would bring $22 million back into the government's coffers just right off the bat and employ 4,000 plus people. So there's immediate ways that we can get our economy back up and running. I believe that, you know, with our COVID, you know, there are certain restrictions, but obviously our businesses are ready to get back up and running. We've seen some really creative solutions for people to come back and do their business in the way that fits them. And I think with our folks looking to get back to work, I think we should take advantage of that. And our kids are going to be coming out of school, graduating. They're going to want to enter into the trades and the unions and the aspects that they want to do to pursue their life. And we want to keep them here. We want to make sure that we have jobs in our community so our children can stay here if that's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Line 3 replacement. Any environmental concerns about that as you try to balance job creation and the environment?
Yes, and you know, I've been here now for 10 years. We moved back in 2010, right? And so I've been following this. Line 3 replacement should have happened 5 years ago. They've had their environmental studies, they've had their reviews, they've had public input. It's actually infrastructure that needs to be replaced because it is at risk right now. So replacing it is actually an environmentally sound decision. So I would say that we need to move forward with that because all these studies have been done.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, where do you stand on Line 3?
You know, I'm opposed to the rebuild of Line 3. I think it's a tough one because, as Donna said very well, there are some potential for some jobs, especially in the short come, that people are really have been waiting for and really have put a lot of hope in. But I think, you know, when we're talking about our transition to a clean energy economy, we've been kicking the can down the road now for decades, really my whole life. I know growing up in the 80s, we were talking about the climate crisis, but we haven't taken the steps that we've needed to mitigate for that. And so now we're in a situation where all of the scientists throughout the world have come together and they're clamoring for our civil institutions, our economic institutions, to make a transition here within the next 10 years. And they have warned us that if we do not transition within these 10 years, that the worst of what the climate crisis has in store for us will be realized. Now, that doesn't mean that the world ends in 10 years, but what that means is that the quality of life for people on the planet will be severely impacted in dramatic negative ways. So it's incumbent upon us to move forward proactively to build a clean energy economy. There's also many jobs to be had in creating that new clean energy infrastructure. And one of the other concerns, just real quick, what I'm really concerned about is if we invest in things like the Line 3 rebuild, what we're going to be left with are these stranded assets where workers in our community are going to really be left high and dry because the age of fossil fuels is ending right now. And what I don't want to see is workers in our community having the rug pulled out from underneath them and not being prepared for these next years of what is already happening all around us. So we need to get on board. We need to lead in that area.
Mm-hmm. Many communities right now looking at sweeping police reforms in the wake of George Floyd's death and other cases of law enforcement using lethal force. What, if any, changes do you think need to be done to address charges of racism and other issues that may be taking place in law enforcement right now?
I think there are a number of really great ideas that are floating around right now. I mean, there is a sort of renaissance of thinking about public safety. How do we create true public safety? And what does a public safety apparatus that serves the public really look like? And I think when we look at our police departments, we see that perhaps the way that they're structured now, where we're reacting to social ills and problems that are happening in our communities with force in our police departments, isn't always the best answer, that we maybe need to diversify. And I think these reforms and changes will look different in different communities, and I think that's appropriate. But there are some basic changes that we can make, reforms to the post board, the reforms that have already taken place at the state level. I support those and some others as well. So yeah, there's many options.
Donna, what are your ideas in this area?
We're the home of the Duluth model, okay? Many people are familiar with that, where the community came together. We identified what was happening with our victims and our assaults and in those categories, and we sat down and we had community input and created what is now internationally known as the Duluth model. So I think that any time that we can bring our stakeholders to the table, it's a good thing. And what I have read from at the federal level with Senator Scott's bill is that justice reform is being talked about, and there's some very good ideas. One of the things that is in that bill, the senator's bill, is more body cams so that we have accountability. And then those body cams, what happens after it? How do they get loaded up? And then the data analyzed and looked at. Also, we talk about training. You need to have better training. And of course, I think you always need to recruit from within your community, the community members that want to serve in that community, because that's their family, that's their home, that's their neighbors. So that's the areas that I would look at.
All right, well, we are out of time. Lots of topics we weren't able to cover, but hopefully you'll get a chance to get out there and talk to the folks before Election Day. Donna Bergstrom, Jen McEwen, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for having us.
This week we begin extensive coverage of the state legislative races in our region. We've invited all of the candidates running for either the House or Senate in our viewing area to submit short videos to introduce themselves to voters. We're calling it Meet Your Candidates. We'll begin with the candidates in Senate District 3, a huge district covering a large portion of Minnesota's Arrowhead region. We'll hear first from DFL incumbent Tom Bach, followed by his Republican challenger Christopher Hogan.
Hi, I'm Tom Bach, State Senator of District 3 here in the Arrowhead region of Minnesota. First, would like to thank you for all your support over my years of service in the legislature and want to ask for your vote again on November 3rd. I commit to you to continue to work very hard on economic development to make sure the state is a strong partner in helping diversify our economy, improve our transportation infrastructure, our healthcare system, and our educational system. I live here, my kids live here, my grandkids live here, and I, like you, deeply care about the future of the Arrowhead region so that it's a good place for us all to live, work, and play. Let me take just a moment to thank you and ask you to please continue to follow the recommendations of the CDC and the Department of Health so that we can get our arms around this COVID-19 pandemic. We have to get beyond this before our economy can come back to where we all want it to be. Please vote for me on November 3rd. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Chris Hogan, and I'm running for Minnesota State Senate District 3. I grew up east of International Falls on Rainy Lake, and am a '94 graduate of Falls High School. Currently, we live in Lake County between Silver Bay and Two Harbors. The last 20 years, I've worked as a commercial lender in our region from International Falls to Bemidji to the Twin Ports. This work experience gives me a unique perspective of the challenges our small businesses, industry, and our families face. I want to represent you in the Senate to build on the assets that our district has. I'll work with Representative Stauber, the Trump administration, and the Republican majority in the state Senate, as well as local leaders, to rebuild our communities and create economic opportunity for our children. I'm running as the pro-industry, pro-commerce candidate, and I believe our new generation of leadership can do just that. Thank you for your vote.
Next, we'll hear from the candidates running in Minnesota House District 6A. The district includes a portion of western St. Louis County as well as eastern Itasca County. We'll hear from Republican challenger Robert Farnsworth, followed by DFL incumbent Julie Sandstead.
Hi, I'm Rob Farnsworth, and I'm running for state representative here in District 6A. I grew up here on the Iron Range over in Chisholm. After high school, I attended college in Hibbing before transferring to the University of St. Thomas, where I earned my bachelor's degree with a double major in history and social studies. A few years later, I earned my master's degree from Mankato in special education. I've been a teacher for about the last 20 years, and I'm also a licensed real estate agent here in Hibbing, where I live with my wife Jamie and our 4 children. I'm running for state representative because I believe our next representative needs to fight for our Iron Range way of life. This includes working to support our current mines as well as fighting for the mines of the future. It also includes encouraging economic development to bring new jobs to our area, as well as quality of life improvements such as improved internet access and new dining and entertainment options. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd so that we can keep the Iron Range great for the next generation.
I'm State Representative Julie Sandstead. I'm from the Range, and the Range comes first in every decision that I make in St. Paul. As a parent and teacher, I know that COVID has left many of us feeling uncertain about the future. But the one thing that is certain is that it's going to take leadership with experience and a proven track record of working across the aisle to solve this crisis. In the next legislative session, I'll be spending my time focusing on economic recovery for our families and small businesses, investing in broadband to diversify and expand our economy, and finally to support range values, mining in the timber industry, labor and unions, and a strong public education. I'm not afraid of hard work or afraid to take a hard vote. I'd appreciate your support in this upcoming election. A vote for Sandstead is a vote for the range we love and the future we deserve.
It's no secret the COVID-19 pandemic has had a severe blow on the economy. One of the hardest hit sectors is the entertainment and convention industry, which has seen businesses bottom out. The Duluth Entertainment and Convention Center, normally a hub of activity, has been mostly quiet since the pandemic shutdown began months ago. The DECC Board of Directors recently took action, naming a new leader to navigate the hard times. Joining us now is Roger Reinert, Interim Executive Director of the DECC. And welcome, Roger. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Many people surprised to see you in this position. You left the legislature, you've done military, you were going to law school, and now you're at the DECC. What drew you to this position?
Well, I served on the DECC board for 10 years, so when there was a leadership transition and a need for someone to step forward during, as you noted, some difficult times, though in the introduction as a sailor, I would say navigating troubled waters. It's actually, Julie, been one of the things that I feel in my professional career has allowed me to bring every background and experience that I've had to the table, from military service during challenging times to my background as a trained attorney to years of public service. Like, they are all being called to task as we try to figure out how to ensure this vital community asset survives the pandemic.
Now, this is an interim position. Is there an interest on your part in making it permanent, perhaps?
Well, I mean, at this point, there's one job, and that's just to make sure that the DECC is still here come next spring or whenever it is that things start to look more normal. You know, again, as I would say, it's been incredibly challenging. I leave every day just exhausted, but also really fulfilled because of that opportunity to use all of my background and experience. And, you know, as a 10-year board member, I'm very passionate about the DECC and its mission, and not just our community, but the region.
Some news breaking this week that the DECC and Visit Duluth are actively discussing a merger. Talk about that.
Well, so the two organizations, not necessarily, but a lot of the stakeholders, including the city of Duluth, are interested in what might that look like. You know, we have overlapping aspects of the two organizations in terms of sales and marketing. We're both about showcasing what Duluth and the region has to offer to the state and farther afield. So I think from at least my standpoint as a DECC employee, it makes sense. They're very strong in some areas that we could be stronger, but it's really up to the two boards, and there's a subcommittee from both boards that has been formed to explore what that might look like.
What does the DECC look like right now as you kind of navigate COVID-19?
Sure. I would say it doesn't look like what most people expect the DECC to look like. So I think one of the really rewarding parts of the role so far is everyone has a favorite story about the DECC. It's a wedding, it's a hockey championship game, it's the Nutcracker. You know, everyone has something they've done at the DECC that they just feel really fond about. And as a place that thrives on bringing people together, obviously that's really challenging right now. However, the same skill set amongst the DECC staff of putting on quality events and making people feel really comfortable and welcomed when they come to the building, and now being really smart about all of the policies and procedures that align with public health and public safety, are allowing us to bring things back into the building again. So we have two guiding principles right now. One is, can we do it safely? And then two, can we generate some revenue doing it? Because we need to do that. We have 800,000 square feet of indoor space with a lot of fixed costs that go along with that. So we're called right now to be really innovative about what we can do with that indoor space, especially as temperatures get colder, that also help us ensure the deck survives the pandemic.
And a trial run, the deck hosted a political event with Donald Trump Jr. Challenges in putting that together, or lessons learned that translate as you go forward?
Both. I mean, I think one of the blessings for us is that the staff really did it well. The staff did it in a way that people would expect the deck to do it. You know, that day we had 140 years of experience on hand with events in the facility. And so, you know, we were able to do something that was very high profile that frankly, I think a number of people in the community thought we might not be successful at in terms of enforcing protocols and guidelines and the maximum of 250 people. And we did all of those things. So the next day, one of the things I talked with the staff about was we now have the ability to say, because this was a really high profile event, if we can do that, we can do whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. And Julie, one of the taglines we have right now is we have the space. So, you know, you have something you want to do and the deck has the space to do it. And we just encourage people to give us a call and let's talk about that thing you want to do that you don't think you can, and we'll help you figure out a way to do it.
And quickly, Governor Walz recently selected you to serve on the post 9/11 task force.
Yeah.
What is that work going to involve?
So next year will be the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and so there's a task force that the governor has put together. There are 8 citizens across the state. I feel very humbled and honored to be one of those 8 citizens. You know, as a combat veteran from Afghanistan, having spent a year there, 9/11 and that follow-on mission are very meaningful to me. But we now have multiple generations that have served in the global war on terror. How do we collect those stories and tell them in a way that honors the sacrifice, especially of those that didn't make it home? And then what do we do with that in terms of maybe a traveling exhibit or a permanent exhibit? I'm also really passionate about finding a way that we can add a memorial to the Capitol grounds so that the families of loved ones and people like myself who have served have some place to go and talk about that experience where we left a part of ourselves back in that challenge. So.
All right. Well, Roger Reinert, no matter what hat you're wearing, you're always a fabulous guest. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
All right.
Well, that's going to do it for our show this week, but you can keep up with Almanac North by following us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And visit the WDSC website for program updates, upcoming events, and more information about the station. And download the PBS video app for on-demand viewing of your favorite programs. Thanks to our guests and to the crew here in the studio. I'm Julie Zenner. Stay healthy, everyone. We'll see you next time.